The cottage keys were still warm in my hand when the phone buzzed. I expected congratulations, but instead, a demand. My son-in-law's voice cut in. "We're coming in 2 hours, and we're bringing 20 people." 2 hours, 20 people, my son said it like a pizza order. I held the phone an inch away and stared at the new brass key on my palm. The cottage smelled like cut pine and fresh paint, the kind of clean that asked to be kept. He was still talking. "Mom, you said you had the space." "Didn't say that, Ethan." I kept my voice level. "You didn't ask." Silhouette, a scoff, and then the cheerful click of a man who assumes the world will cushion him. I set the phone on the counter where the afternoon light fell in a bright triangle. The lock screen lit itself, ETA, 2 hours. It glowed like a timer in a game I hadn't agreed to play. On the small dining table, I laid out a fresh notebook and drew a line down the middle. Domestic on the left, legal on the right. I wrote the date. Under domestic, I listed sheets, towels, coffee. Under legal, I wrote nothing yet, only underlined the word the way I used to underline titles on a chalkboard, so students knew where to look. I walked the rooms. One bed, one small guest room, a love seat, a kitchen that made sense. The porch ran the length of the front, railings newly painted. Wind chimes hung near the door, pale shells I'd strung on move-in day. They barely stirred. Wendy'd from a folder and looked at my name. Not a hyphen in sight, not his, not anyone's. I didn't photograph it, not yet. I slid it back and locked the folder in the bedroom drawer with the key the seller had labeled Master. The phone buzzed again. "We'll bring folding chairs." Ethan's text. "No, you'll ask." The typing dots came, then vanished. I brewed coffee because I don't think without it. The kettle clicked off, the phone lit up again, the same countdown, unblinking. The cottage clock ticked, patient and competent. My lungs followed it. Inhale, exhale, decide. I took painter's tape and a felt tip from a ceramic cup and wrote day 0 in neat block letters. I taped it above the light switch by the door. Teachers make bulletin boards. It's how we declare units. This unit would be short. When I tested them, the gravel drive would hold 4 cars, 6 if no one minded the ditch. I minded the ditch. I stood at the top step and the mountain air loosened something behind my ribs. "Congratulations," a voice called from across the narrow road. An older woman in a sun hat watering petunias. I lifted a hand. "Thank you," I said. "Family coming?" She nodded at the second wind chime, still in its box on the chair. It had wooden bars and a simple brass clapper, deeper tone promised on the packaging. Apparently, I kept my smile small. "Well," she said, trotting the hose back to the spigot, "sound carries up here. I'll keep that in mind." When she went inside, I returned to the table and added a line under domestic, earplugs. Then, under legal, I wrote a single word I hadn't let myself write for years. Boundaries. The phone buzzed once more. "We'll be there in 2 hours with 20 people. Unsent, I typed, then deleted it. Teachers know when a note will be read as a dare. I left the message unsent and instead wrote, "Boundaries equals rules visible in the notebook." I opened the junk drawer I'd barely filled and found a blue painter's card from the hardware store. On the back, I printed, "Please knock." I stood with it in my hand, tested the idea of taping it to the door. That would be theater. I wanted policy. I measured the porch post with my forearm, old carpenter's trick, and imagined a clean placard where the wood met the rail. Later, I told myself, policy requires a procedure, and procedure holds better than a plea. Hummed. I wiped an imaginary streak from the stainless and set the notebook on top where I'd see it first thing. Domestic on the left, legal on the right. I underlined legal again. The phone timer ticked down, minutes swallowing seconds. I put on my walking shoes and moved through the rooms one more time, counting towels, checking hinges, confirming the latch on the back door. Not panic, inventory. Calm is a kind of homework. The shell chimes finally chimed, just one soft click as a draft slipped through the screen door. I watched the blank porch sign where a future placard would live and thought how a sign is just handwriting until someone respects it. Undermined, heart pulse. I bought this quiet, I intend to keep it. Wilmington vibrated again. This time I answered on speaker and set it face up. Mom, Ethan said, bright in public. I could hear other voices behind him, windows down, radio up. You're going to love them. Didn't ask, I said. It's family. You said you had space. I have a house, I said. Space belongs to whoever owns it. A beat. A smaller voice. Mom, be flexible. Dana said somewhere in the car, coaxing. Just for tonight. I'll be fair, I said. That's better than flexible. What does that mean? Ethan laughed. You're not going to go all teacher on us. It means you should call before you arrive with 20 people, I said. It means don't touch what isn't offered. Mom, he said in the tone he uses when he wants me to be the joke. Relax. I am relaxed, I said and clicked the call off. On the counter, the phone went back to its countdown, impartial as math. I wrote coffee 2 canisters under domestic and copy keys, under legal, and felt my shoulders settle. Then I opened the front door, taped the small day 0 note at eye level beside the frame, and stood a moment listening to the quiet place I'd bought humming to itself. The shell chimes nudged again, a single bright tap like a polite throat clear. I looked at the door and then at the phone's locked screen. ETA, 2 hours. I left it lit. Cars stacked nose to tail along my gravel drive as if the ditch were a valet lane. Doors swung, voices poured. A child shrieked the way only sugared children can. Ethan threw his arms wide on my steps. Folks were set. Mom said there's room. Into the doorway. I didn't. Foreground, he turned his head just enough to miss it, then brightened for the crowd. She insisted. Suitcases bumped inside. Someone called Wi-Fi. Another, is there oat milk? The word please took the night off. My elbow without looking at me. We'll put the little ones in the master. It's closest to the bathroom. It's my room, I said. We'll be careful, she whispered as if care were a key. From the hall, a cousin I didn't recognize pointed down the corridor. That one's bigger. I'll take it. A litter of shoes bloomed across the entry tile. Ethan clapped his hands. Make yourselves at home. She'll point you to linens. I will not. I kept it even. Ask before you take. He laughed like I'd told a quaint joke. She's teasing. The hose across the lane hissed to a stop. The neighbor in the sun hat, same as earlier, stood at the curb now. Water beating on the asphalt around her sandals. Everything all right, she asked, friendly and cautious. Ethan answered for me. Perfect. She insisted we come up. Her eyes slid to me. I held her gaze. I didn't say that. The sentence felt small in the open air. Oh, she said, and the word landed like a feather that somehow still made a mark. Inside, a teenager thudded a suitcase into the baseboard and winced. My bad. He didn't bend. I moved to the dining table, set my notebook down and drew 5 fast tally marks under head count. Then another 5. Then 2. 22 ghosted out of the ink. On the opposite page under notes, I wrote verbal misrepresentation. Neighbor, present. I didn't underline it. Not yet. Dana leaned on the door frame. Mom, can we not do the teacher thing tonight? The what? I asked. The clipboard voice? She smiled like it might sweeten everything. It sets people off. I kept my pen steady. I'm not asking them to conjugate, I'm asking them to ask. Aunt somebody breezed by with my bath towels. Where do you keep the good glasses? In a locked cabinet, I said. That made 3 heads turn. I let them. From the hallway. This bed squeaks. Another voice. Do we have enough pillows? As if pillows sprout when summoned. Killing swung into the kitchen and plucked a cherry from the bowl I'd set for myself. You're making a face, he said. I'm making a record. Same difference, he grinned. We'll Venmo you later. Later isn't payment. Mom, Dana warned softly. I slid my folder from the drawer, felt the smooth, stiff weight of a deed that had taken me 3 decades of grading to afford, and walked it to the bedroom. Ethan followed with the cherry stem in his teeth. What's that? He asked. My papers. I closed the drawer, turned the key, pocketed it. Mine. He nodded at the crowded hall. Family, Mom, you said, breached, I said, after his hands. Look, this is us having a good time. Be flexible. I'll be fair, I said, that's better. He smirked. Words. Rules, I said. You'll see them soon. He blinked at that, the first flicker of interest all night, then slipped back into the party with his easy shoulders. In the entry, a Bluetooth speaker coughed to life. One test blast, all bass and bravado, enough to rattle the porch glass. Then it cut when someone laughed. Oops, wrong button. The carpet settled again, but the air remembered. I picked up the notebook. Head count, 22. Under supplies, I wrote sheets, towels with numbers I didn't want to believe. Under boundaries, I wrote a single bullet. Rooms assigned by request equals chaos. Beside it, tomorrow, visibility. Donna returned with an armful of my pillows. Please don't embarrass us, she murmured. That's not my plan. Then what is? Clarity. She glanced at the porch where the neighbor still stood in the wash of the security light, pretending to scroll her phone. The whole neighborhood will talk if you make a scene. They already are, I said, and I haven't made one. Mom. Ask, I said, before you take. I didn't raise my voice. I tuned it the way you tune a classroom before a test, soft enough that people have to lean in. Ethan reappeared with two cousins, both holding liquor bags like trophies. We brought our own, he announced. Then bring your own trash bags, I said. Come on, it's family. He grinned at the cousins. She's teasing. I stepped past him and straightened the porch sign that had been knocked crooked by the stream of bodies. The shells chimed once, a small sound under the scrape of a cooler across wood. I pressed the sign flat and felt how loose the nail already was. Heart pulse. Consent isn't retroactive. A child darted past with a dripping popsicle that drew a sun-warmed stripe down the hallway. A woman I didn't know called, "Where's the master?" Dana pointed without looking at me. I wrote master, occupied, unapproved, and drew a small box around it. Back at the table, I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank document. The page stayed white as a wall. Not tonight. Tomorrow policy, not plea. I closed it and instead typed a file name I'd recognize in the morning. Then I shut the lid. Clang, the hose across the street hissed again, a late rinse. The neighbor lifted a small hand. I lifted mine. Neither of us smiled. I set my pen beside the notebook, stood and walked to the printer. The tray was empty but ready. I clicked print on a blank template I'd drafted last month and never thought I'd need. The machine woke with a mechanical swallow. One page slid out, then another, then another. I hit pause after a dozen and changed the count to 22. On the buffet, a capped pen waited, blue and patient. I turned out the porch light. The base didn't start again. Not yet. In the dim kitchen, the little green display on the printer glowed, the cue line crawling forward. Paper stacked itself, clean and wordless, while the house braced for morning. By morning, the cottage smelled like sugar and wet towels. I wiped a ring off the counter and pulled a fresh page from the printer. A table cost to date. I wrote yesterday's totals in tidy lines: groceries, paper products, cleaner, a faucet part I might not need yet but probably would. I taped the sheet to the refrigerator with a pair of flat magnets and stepped back. The numbers made a sound in my head like a bell, small and precise. Punished, ended the corner, hair damp, grin bright. We doing bulletin boards now? We're doing accountability, I said. He peered at the sheet as if it might be a cartoon. She's joking, he called over his shoulder to whoever was listening.
I'm not. A neighbor's steps scuffed the gravel outside the screen. She paused at the porch rail, eyes on the paper in my hand as I smoothed the bottom edge.
Morning,
she said, voice neutral. Morning, I answered. Looks official. Her glance flicked to Ethan's smile, then back to the list. Not approval, not disapproval, just witness. She moved on, the stones gritting beneath her sandals. I picked up a capped pen and set it in the tray below the sheet. Names go next, I said. If you're staying, print. If not, take your things now.
Relax, Ethan said, dropping into a chair like it owed him rest. We'll Venmo later.
Lent.
Here isn't Paymer this. She's invoicing breakfast.
I'm recording costs, I said. Payment is a separate decision. Dana slipped in, a stack of my towels pressed to her chest. Can we not make a thing out of this? People are here to have fun.
Placerty isn't a thing, I said. It's a courtesy. Near T jabbed a thumb at the fridge. You got a spot for Bibes on there? For vibes, I said, untreated. Two kids raced through, one with damp hair and my good hairbrush in his hand. Where'd you get that? I asked. He shrugged, gone already. I added a small line in the notebook. Brush, missing. The pen felt heavier than it was. Ethan spun the sheet slightly with one finger. This is adorable. I straightened it. It's readable. Copia. We're family, he said, smiling at the table as if a table could be won to his side. Then signing should be easy. He looked up at me, grin held, eyes not. It's tacky, Mom. Is using someone else's towels without asking. Towels? He made it a tragedy. We're talking towels, and quiet, and groceries, and claim but took. I kept my tone low. It's all one thing. He spread his hands. We're literally here to help you settle in. By emptying my pantry? I asked. That's generous. Bang put the towels down next to the coffee. Please, she whispered, don't embarrass us. Embarrassment, I said, is earned. She drew a breath like she might say something sharper, then didn't. At the doorway, the teen who'd bumped the baseboard last night tried to pass unnoticed with a speaker under his arm. The sensor light blinked, catching his reflection in the stainless steel. He paused at the sheet, read the top line aloud. Costs to date, and smirked. How much is fun? Depends on who pays, I said. He slid by. I took a stack of blank pages from the printer. My template had finished without my permission, and laid them beside the pen on the buffet. The header read, lodging agreement in clean, unthreatening letters. I didn't hand them out. Not yet. The stack looked like what it was. An option. Ethan tapped the fridge twice. Mom, I love you, but this makes you look tight. I prefer accurate. He leaned back, chair on two legs. We'll take care of it later. You mean I will. Led again, the stage smile that asks a room to join in. A couple of relatives did, out of habit. Turned to the sink, rinsed a mug I hadn't used yet, and let the water run until it got cold. If you're staying, I said to the room, print your names. If you're not, the drive is clear until 11. Stopped. No one how moved. Cold again on her way back, one palm lifted in a small wave. Good luck, she said, not quite smiling. Thank you, I said, and the words landed like a peg in softwood, something to hang weight on. Somebody reached past me for a glass. Where are the good ones? She asked. Locked, I said. That's not very welcoming. She sniffed and poured water into a plastic cup, as if plastic had suddenly become a kind of insult to her dignity. Tech Ethan pushed away from the table. Let's hit the lake, he announced to the hallway. Give Mom some space to spreadsheet. Bring the trash bags back from the car, I said. You'll need them. He didn't answer. The door opened, feet pounded the porch. The empty spot on the counter where the fruit bowl had been looked like a missing tooth. I wrote 2 more lines on the fridge sheet, numbers that made my pen pause before they turned into ink. The sheet's corners were square, the magnets held. In the reflection on the freezer door, I caught my hand flattening the paper like I was pressing down nerves. I went to the porch and straightened the blank sign where a future placard would hang. The shells rang once, soft as a throat being cleared. The mountain air carried their single note out and let it go. Heart pulse. If they won't read the room, they'll read the numbers. I stepped back inside, gathered the printed agreements and carried them to the buffet. The capped pen lay like a promise beside them. The printer hummed again when I bumped a desk and the queue woke of its own accord, pages whispering out one by one. I let them come. By evening, the sheet on the fridge had a second column and a little smear where someone's wet thumb had tried to spin it sideways. I straightened it and added 2 lines, paper plates, fruit gone. Ethan leaned in the doorway, bright and casual. People, relax. She's kidding. I'm not, I said. He tapped the magnet with a knuckle. We'll Venmo later. Later isn't payment. Laughter rippled from the living room. Someone opened my cabinet with that particular entitlement clack. I wrote, cabinet opened, on the notebook without looking up. Breached. Mom, Dana said, appearing with my bath mat over her shoulder like a banner. Please don't do the teacher thing. What thing? Receiver, the clipboard. I'm holding a pen. I kept my tone even. That's different than a lecture. Puffed awake. thumped a single bass note, then went mercifully quiet when someone shouted, "Wrong playlist." The glass in the porch door trembled and settled. Ethan slid a cherry from a bowl that had been full that morning. "You're making a face." "I'm making a record." Cuck grinned at the room. Same thing with her. From the hall, a teen's voice. "This bed squeaks." Another. "Where are the good glasses?" The house answered with its steady hum and the tick of the stove cooling, as if patience were a sound. I set a receipt on the dining table. $286.12 so far, I said, not to him, but to the page. Ethan clapped my shoulder. "She's kidding, right, everyone?" Louder now for the audience. Hose hissed on the curb. The neighbor in the sun hat paused by the rail. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyes on the cluster behind Ethan. "Blazing," he said, turning charm to full. "She insisted we come." I met her eyes. I didn't say that. Her smile faltered. Then she glanced at the sheet on the fridge and back at me. "Well," she said, "sound carries up here." She moved on. The hose hissed again, a long sideways sigh. I wrote "verbal misrepresentation, witnessed" in the notebook and drew one neat line under it. Then I underlined domestic and legal, just once each, letting the ink set the difference. Donna lowered the bath mat onto a chair. "They're here." The total at the bottom stepped up a notch. Numbers don't smirk. That's what I like about them. "Wi-Fi password?" a cousin called. "No," I said. He blinked. "No?" "Ask nicely," I said, "and return what you take." "Geez," he muttered. "It's family. You'll want a record. You'll want a show of being wounded." Someone snorted. The porch door banged open and shut. A kid dragged a cooler across the floor, leaving a new arc in the wood. I wrote "scratch," "haul," and put a small square around it so I could find it later with a camera. "Mom," Dana whispered, leaning close, "I'm begging you, stop keeping score. It makes you look." "Careful," I said. "Een." I looked at her, at the people who had taken my bed and my towels and my quiet, and now wanted the word mean too. "I'll be fair," I said. "You can call that what you like." The bass test came again, a little louder, and then cut. The shells on the porch chime rattled and fell still, absorbed into the noise. I set a second receipt on the table. "This," I said, tapping once, "is what has already happened." Ethan's smile switched on for the audience. "And this," he said, spreading his arms, "is family having fun." The house answered with a sound I'd been expecting all day. Snap, the kitchen faucet's tired neck giving up under a hand that assumed everything here was made to bend. Silence. 3 beats, then a teen. My bad." I didn't look at Ethan when I wrote faucet, broken, and the time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Across the lane, the neighbor stopped again at the end of her hose. She looked at my front door, at Ethan's easy grin, at the paper on the fridge through the window. Her face didn't tell me anything. Heart pulse. Laughter can't erase ink. I added the faucet part to the cost to date and watched the bottom line jump. The magnet thudded softly as my palm flattened the corner, as if the sheet itself needed steadying. On the porch, the wind went flat. Inside, someone whispered, "It'll be fine." The word "fine" evaporated as fast as it was spoken. Who will they believe by morning? The faucet's neck kept time for me. Drip, patient and smug, as if the house itself were marking what gets taken when people think they're entitled to take. I set my phone to camera and started where the arc in the hall caught the light. Shutter angle. Shutter again with a ruler laid beside it. Not for codes or dates, just scale. The notebook lay open on the buffet. Domestic left, legal right. Under legal, I added a small box. Photo set started. A cousin drifted in, hair wet, barefoot. He glanced at the camera in my hand. "Stuff happens," he said. "True," I said, framing the gouge. "So do invoices." He lifted both palms like I'd come at him with a subpoena. "Whoa, it's a scratch." "It's a line item," I said and took the shot. The faucet dripped again. Click into the steel sink. One more note in a song I didn't choose. I moved to the bathroom for the smeared towels and the empty hairbrush slot. Shutter. The mirror caught my face and offered me a choice. Plead or proceed. I chose proceed. Back in the kitchen, Ethan passed behind me, a cherry stem between his teeth like punctuation. "We doing crime scene?" he asked, cheerful. "Documentation," I said. Stormed at the hall. "You're really going to make a thing out of living?" "I'm going to keep a record," I said. "You can keep living." He laughed and kept walking, a man with a stage to find. I put the phone down on the table and opened the laptop. The faucet kept time. Drip. I breathed with it anyway. Calm as homework. Subject line: HOA complaint. Noise damages at street name. I typed clean bullet lines, the way I taught students to present a lab. Dates, times, the neutral words I trust. One sentence that would read like a hand extended to policy, not a fist. I attached 5 photos: the hall arc, the bathroom towels, the baseboard scuff from the suitcase, the faucet's tired tilt, the stain on the porch plank where somebody set a dripping cooler. No captions beyond location and today. Then I read the whole thing aloud once to hear where it tried to plead and cut those parts out. The faucet dripped exactly twice while I hovered over send. Against the doorframe. "You're emailing the HOA?" "Yes." "Mom." "Unrealistic, the Association for Homeowners," I said. "I'm the one who owns this home." She let her head fall back against the jamb. "Please, can we talk before you—" "Nitor, we're talking." "That's not what I mean." "I know," I said, and clicked send. Bisexual, there was nothing. Then the reply I needed more than I wanted appeared like a buoy. Complaint received, case number 1472. The header sat clean at the top of my inbox, blue dot bright. The subheader line read, "An officer/representative may inspect within 72 hours. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't whisper finally. I let my eyes memorize the shape of the numbers and the promise inside the word may. I wrote case number 1472 in the notebook, under legal, and drew a small square around it. That's how you find important things fast. Patriarch, Ethan's voice floated from the hall. "A witch hunt?" "Crier, an inspection," I said. Killing into the kitchen with his stage smile on. "We'll clean up." "You'll pay for what you don't clean," I said, and turned the laptop so the blue dot and the subject line faced him. He glanced and shrugged. "They don't actually do anything." "They keep records," I said. "So do I." The faucet answered with a drip that felt like a scent. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like a favor. "Mom, this is family. Don't make it ugly." "Lee arrived with 20 people and no question mark," I said quietly. Dana's eyes were big and pleading. "Please, just don't escalate." "I'm starting the process that exists for this situation," I said. "That's not escalation. It's comprehension." She looked at the case number again. 72 hours? "That's a lot." "It's enough," I said. Aunt somebody breezed in with a plastic cup. "Do we need to sign something?" she joked, chin toward the stack of blank agreements. "You might," I said. "If you're staying," I kept my hand off the paper. "Today wasn't about that, not yet." The faucet drip ticked once more and then mercifully stopped when I tightened the handle a fraction. I took a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Outside, the gravel scrunched. The neighbor in the sun hat passed with her dog and gave me a small, searching look through the screen. I lifted 2 fingers from the keyboard in a greeting I hoped read as steady. She kept walking. I added one penciled phrase to the sketch in the notebook margin where the future porch sign would go. "By appointment." I let the graphite sit on the paper a second before I closed the book. A sign is just handwriting until someone respects it. But the handwriting starts somewhere. "Mom," Dana tried again, softer. "We can figure this out as a family." "We are," I said. "I'm the part of the family who reads the rules." Ethan clicked his tongue. "They'll forget by Monday." "Maybe," I said. I refreshed the inbox once more to make sure the confirmation didn't vanish like a trick of light. It didn't. The blue dot glowed, stubborn as a lighthouse. Heart pulse. Paper remembers what people forget. I stood and looked at the door, at the porch rail, at the place where sound enters and exits a life. On the screen, the auto-reply line remained. "An officer, representative, may inspect within 72 hours. The faucet, quiet now, left a small ring in the sink that looked like the start of a clock. Who reaches the porch first? The printer woke the way a sleeper does when their name is called. Slow, then certain. One page slid out, then another. The header I'd chosen in calm light now carrying a sharper edge. Lodging agreement. I stacked them in fours, tapped them square, and set a blue pen on the top packet like a baton. At the bottom of each page, my small, neat footer. Signed by 6 p.m. I didn't bold it. I didn't have to. The numbers do their own raising. From the living room, a laugh rolled into the hallway like a ball you can't catch with your foot without stubbing a toe. I set another finished page aside. The chimes on the porch hung still. The night had chosen quiet. The house had not. Ethan leaned into the doorway, thumbs in his pockets. Homework? Policy, I said, sliding the newest sheet into the stack. If you're staying, you sign. Escalating looked at the footer, then at me, as if the words might blink. You wouldn't dare. Dana's voice arrived a step behind him. This is unnecessary, Mom. Clarity isn't a scene, I said. It's the opposite of one. Minster drifted past with a plastic cup. Do we get a discount for family? You get a choice, I said. Sign or don't. If you don't, you leave. Clang laughed, bright and short. She's bluffing. I'm reading, I said, tapping the footer with a fingertip. It says 6 o'clock. He pushed off the jam, came further in, and picked up the top page. 140 a night? You serious? Jim Horbash. Like a hotel? Like a house that belongs to someone, I said. Law calls it lodging. He turned to Dana, as if I'd switched to a language only she spoke. She's really doing a contract. Dana's asked me for mercy and asked me not to call it that. Please, Mom. I said I'd be fair, I told her. This is fairness in writing. The printer grumbled, spat another page. I lined it up with the stack and capped the pen until the tray was full. 22. Bass surged once from the speaker in the other room, a deep whump that rattled the porch rail and made the magnet on the fridge tick. Across the lane, the neighbor cupped her hand to her ear. Quiet hours start at 10, she called, not unkind. Thank you, I called back. Inside, I let the words sit in the doorway for the people who needed it. Ethan tilted his head toward the porch. Hear that? Even the neighbors think this is too much. They think the noise is, I said. So do I. Quarantine. We'll clean up. We'll clean up. The paper isn't about cleaning. It's about staying. He flipped the page over like he might find a joke on the back. You can't expect people to sign this. I expect adults to choose and to live with the choice. I slid the pen toward him with 2 fingers. Like adults. He didn't touch it. We'll Venmo later. Later isn't payment, I said. It's a promise. Step closer, voice lowered to protect us, or the others, or both. Mom, please don't humiliate us. People can see the table from the porch. Good, I said. That's where signatures go. Restarting. Why are you doing this tonight? Ethan demanded. It's late. Because 6 o'clock happens whether or not we prepare for it. His smile worked at its edges, then let go. You really think someone's going to sign this? I think someone is going to read it, I said, and decide they're a guest or they aren't. A teen cousin jiggled the locked cabinet and frowned at the clink. She locked the good stuff, he muttered. Imagine that, I said. Ethan put the page down with theatrical care. You know what this looks like? Accountable, I said. Mean, he said. Accurate, I said. He huffed. You can't charge us. I can, I said. And I am. The bass tried to puff its chest again and got cut off by someone's, hey, from the next room. The train of laughter that followed had a hitch in it now. I didn't track who heard what. The agreements gleamed at the edges under the dining light, quiet feathers of consequence. Tear gathered the stack and laid it on the buffet where the neighbor's eyes might catch the header through the window if she came back with the dog. I added the pen, horizontal on top like a seal waiting for a press. Ethan leaned over the stack, reading the footer again, despite himself. Signed by 6 p.m. That's not a real deadline, he said. It will be, I said. Kiss straightened, spread his arms to the hall. We're going to the lake in the morning, he announced. Everyone sleep where you want. Sleep where you were invited, I said. He grinned at me for too long, a man who lives by holding applause, and then he went to go find it in the other room. Dana stayed. Please, don't make them pick in public. Private choices drew a public crowd, I said. Public choices can clear it. She swallowed, then nodded at the stack. And if no one signs, then no one stays. You mean Ethan? I mean no one, I said. He isn't special here. She flinched just a little at that, and I hated that I saw it. I put my hand on the pen and moved it an inch, the way you move a chess piece you already knew you would move. The blue looked steady against white paper. Heart pulse. If dignity needs a signature, I'll bring pens. Porch flicked once as the door opened and shut somewhere in the house. A cooler lid snapped, footsteps softened. I walked to the porch, looked at the empty place where a real sign would hang, and imagined the clean serif letters of "by appointment only." Then I looked back into my own lit rooms and saw the stack on the buffet like a spine. The neighbor's porch light across the lane blinked out. Mine stayed on. The base did not return. The pages waited. I printed the porch notice on heavy paper so the wind wouldn't have its way with it. The letters were big enough to read from the gravel. Private property, agreement required, compliance deadline, 6 p.m. today. The course date torn, 2 neat strips. I pressed the sign against the porch post where a placard would someday hang in brass. The shells on the chime clicked once, like a throat clearing before a lecture. Turbulence stepped outside with a mug that wasn't his. What's this, office hours? Policy, I said. If you're staying, you sign. If not, you gather your things by 6. Read as if the words might flip to punchline if he stared hard enough. Mom, it's a lake weekend. It's also my house. Dana appeared behind him, eyes sweeping the rail, the chairs, the neighbor across the lane who had slowed to a near stop. Please don't embarrass us, she whispered. Embarrassment is earned. Making people uncomfortable. They made themselves comfortable, I said, without asking. 2 cousins clattered onto the porch with flip-flops and a cooler that left a white skid where it bumped the paint. One looked at the notice and laughed. She's charging cover. Ordinate. Happy to leave it at 0, I said, if you don't stay. Ironing table had become a tidy little courthouse. 22 packets in a clean stack, the blue pen laid across the top like a bridge. I brought them to the threshold and set them on a side table where they could be seen without being thrust. The header read, Lodging Agreement. The footer, simple, quiet, read, Signed by 6 p.m. Ethan lifted the top page and flicked it with his finger. You can't be serious. Ethalized, I said. Sign it. He barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. You're not going to make everyone do this in front of the neighborhood. I'm going to make it visible, I said. Visibility keeps people honest. A camera shutter snicked from the lane. The neighbor in the sun hat, phone angled, took a single photo of the notice and looked up to see if I'd catch her. I did. She raised 2 fingers in apology. I nodded once. Witness is not the same as enemy. Ethan lowered his voice, stage volume, cut to private. You're turning family into customers. I'm turning uninvited guests into adults with choices. We'll Venmo later, he said, soft as if softness were a solvent. Later is not payment. Mom, Dana touched his arm, just don't escalate. I'm not, I said. The deadline is the deadline whether I whisper it or read it out loud. Somebody marched up with a beach bag. Do we really have to sign a contract to sleep? You have to sign to stay, I said, or you can pack, and we'll call this a day visit. She made a huffy sound that wanted to be righteous and couldn't find the pitch. In front of everyone? In front of the porch, I said, same place you arrived. The younger cousin peered at the notice. 6 p.m., that's early. Have plenty of daylight to get home. He looked at Ethan for a signal. Ethan smiled like a host in a bar he doesn't own. Ignore it, he said to the cousin, then to me. You can't actually enforce this. I can make choices visible, I said. People don't like to perform greed. He spread his hands at the road. Look around, nobody cares. Someone always does, I said, and glanced at the neighbor who pretended not to be listening. He snorted, you're not going to get the cops involved. I'm not, I said. They're peacekeeping witnesses, not enforcers. The choice is yours. He tilted his head, smile firming up again. So you're going to stand here until someone signs? No, I said. I'm going to make breakfast. You'll have until 6. I brought the packets back inside and laid them, fan-like, on the table. The blue pen lay across the top, simple as a horizon. I folded a sheet of paper into a little tent and wrote, "Print your name." I hesitated, then set it beside the stack. Not a threat, an invitation. Relatives drifted through to look and then drifted away as if the words had a temperature they didn't like. Dana stood and stared longer than the rest. "You could have just asked us," she said. "I did," I said. "You told me to be flexible." "That's not the same as this. This is what flexible looks like when it has to hold weight. People will think you're..." "Careful?" I asked. She stared at the pen. "Mean?" "Accurate," I said. The conversation had grooves now, familiar and unfunny. The neighbor's camera shutter clicked once more. A car slowed, read the notice, rolled on. The house breathed. The fridge hummed, steady as a metronome. Somewhere in the back, a child asked where the good cereal was, like cereal appears when you ask nice enough. Ethan drifted in and leaned on the table with the sort of casual confidence that gets people to follow lines they shouldn't. "You're going to regret this." "Probably." I lifted the pen and set it back down exactly where it had been. "Regret is cheaper than repair." He laughed again, shorter now. "And what happens at 6? "You find out if you're a guest," I said, "or a trespasser with good PR." "Forgiven." "Ethan," I said, matching his voice for the first time all morning. "Print. Or pack." He held my eye for a long moment, then looked past me to the window where the porch notice fluttered once. His jaw worked. "We're going to the lake," he announced over my shoulder to no one in particular. "Come on." Hammered. "Take the trash bags," I said. "Jesus," a cousin muttered. I didn't correct the theology. I corrected the behavior. "Trash bags," I repeated, pointing with my chin. 2 disappeared to the pantry with theatrical suffering. They returned with rolls and stomped down the steps. Heart pulse. Today the house speaks in policy. Threshold caught between tides. "Please," she whispered, "don't make him look bad." "He can do that for himself," I said. "Or he can sign." One more time, and then followed him out, torn clean through. The wind changed. The shells in the chime pinged a single, bright note that made the hairs on my arm lift. Tires whispered on gravel. Headlights slid across my living room wall like someone pulling a pale sheet up a body. A patrol car eased to a stop at the curb. Officer Ruiz stood with one palm resting on the porch rail as if he were keeping the house from sliding. Sun on his shoulders, patient eyes. "So we're clear," he said, voice even. "I'm here as a peacekeeping witness. This is a civil situation. I don't remove people. I confirm choices." I held my phone so he could see what I had already read twice. The banner at the top glowed, "Inspection. Day 6, 10 a.m. "And you've posted your conditions?" "Yes," I said. "Sign by 6 p.m. if they're staying, otherwise they pack and go." Ethling ran halfway out the door, like a man who means to command a stage from the wings. "You called the cops on family?" "I invited a witness," I said. Ruiz turned slightly toward Ethan without changing his tone. Ermacy Ethan laughed, short and sharp. "You hear that? She thinks paper makes this tidy." "Paper makes it accountable," I said. Ruiz watched our faces the way good teachers watch a room. "It helps if everyone understands the timeline," he looked at me. "Deadline?" 6 o'clock today." He nodded. "Okay, my role is to be around if anyone feels unsafe while choosing. I'll do a drive-by just before 6. If things are calm, I stay out of the way." Ethan scoffed. "So you're what, her muscle?" "I'm nobody's muscle," Ruiz said. "I'm a witness." The neighbor in the sun hat hovered halfway down the walk, pretending to be busy with a leash that didn't need adjusting. I didn't wave. I didn't need another audience. I needed the rules to be as plain as the paper. "Look," Ethan said to Ruiz, "we came up to help her settle in. She's overreacting, family stuff." Ruiz that makes people run out of spin. "Then it'll be easy to sign." And that asks the crowd to join him in the joke. "We'll Venmo later." "That is not signing," I said. Ruiz nodded once, as if we'd solved a word problem. "Okay, I'll leave you to it. If anyone wants to talk privately about options, I'll be sitting in the car for 5 minutes. Options? Ethan said. There are options? Two, Ruiz said, sign or leave. Dana took a small step toward me. Mom, maybe we could just… He adult thing, I said, not unkind. Talk, she finished, caught in the middle because that's where she chooses to live. Ruiz tipped his hat toward the porch notice. Ma'am, keep that up until 6. Sir, keep the volume down for your neighbors. I'll swing back. He stepped off the porch. The squad car gave a soft brake chirp as he climbed in. The fans cycled off. The sudden quiet felt larger than the porch. Ethan watched him go and then turned to me with a triumphant half-smile. See? He can't do anything. He doesn't need to, I said. The clock does it for him. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to make it a secret. He's not coming back. I heard him, I said. He's coming back. Said, please don't make me pick a side in public. You already did last night, I said, gentle and not. You went with him. She flinched at the accuracy of that. I don't want the neighborhood to think. They'll think what they see, I said, and held up the phone again, so the banner at the top was the only thing anyone could read. Inspection, day 6, 10 a.m. Ethan rolled his eyes. What does that even mean, inspection? They'll never show. Maybe, I said, or maybe they will. 6 o'clock happens. He stepped back inside and raised his voice so the house could hear. We're going to the lake. Nobody sign anything. Take the trash bags, I said. Edie didn't answer. I stayed on the porch 1 beat longer, the way you do when the bell rings and you still need to see who hasn't turned in the test. The porch notice fluttered and settled. The phone screen dimmed but kept the banner at the top like a line of blue sky. Heart pulse. Deadlines don't vanish because he waves them away. Forearm rolled away. The neighbor's dog tugged at the leash and finally got her moving. In the reflection on the storm door, I looked like a woman holding a clock. Inside, the dining table was still a courthouse. Outside, the house waited with me. Reliable arrived in a dented van with a coffee the color of courage and a face that said he'd seen every version of Lost Keys a mountain town could invent. 2 cylinders, I told him, holding the bedroom and office doors open. Private rooms only, common areas stay as is. Congratulations, not occupancy, he said, already kneeling to pop the old plate. Clean. Ethan drifted into the hall with his amused anchorman smile. You can't lock people out. I can lock me in, I said, and my papers. The locksmith glanced up. Ma'am's asking for privacy locks. Perfectly lawful. Not an eviction. Click. The first cylinder slid home with a crisp little victory. Dana hovered with wringing hands. Mom, this looks punitive. Complied, I said. Prepared beats polite when the door's mine. Punitive, Ethan repeated for the audience that wasn't there yet. You hear that? She's locking family out of rooms. Of my rooms, I said. Spaces are open. If you stay, you sign. He chuckled. We're not doing your hotel paperwork. Then you're not staying. The locksmith stood, tested the bedroom latch, and handed me a brief set of instructions I already knew. New keys, keep the spares separate. He paused, looking between us, and added neutrally, this is normal in shared houses. Private spaces, shared spaces. Reduces drama. You should put that on your van, I said, and he smiled with his eyes. Ethan tilted his head. Dramatic is locking doors while family's here. What's dramatic, I said, is 20 people moving into a one-bedroom without asking. The locksmith moved to the office door. Same keying or separate? Separate, I said. Papers in here, bedroom there. Unwilling. The second cylinder clicked into place, clean and final. He wrote paid on the receipt with a stamp that thunked once like a gavel. A single photo of the receipt, clean stamp paid visible, and slid the paper into my notebook pocket. On cue, the screen door slapped as a gust rolled up the lane. The chimes rattled metal on metal, a warning without words. The gust left calmer air behind it. Illegal lockout, Ethan said, louder now. The locksmith didn't take the bait. Not what this is, he said, tone flat as a level. Common areas remain accessible. Storage/bedrooms can be restricted. No one's barred from leaving. No one's forced to stay. Can we not do this with the neighbors watching? No neighbors, I said, just choices. Flushing a cousin I barely knew clattered in, fishing a shiny copy from his pocket like a rabbit from a hat. No worries. I made a key last night at the gas station. He winked at Ethan, stuck the copy into the bedroom lock, and turned. The lock didn't even pretend to care. Metal on metal, zero give. He tried again, harder. The knob shrugged. The cousin glanced at Ethan, then me. Huh. Underestimated, the locksmith said mildly. Copies of the old key don't apply. Ethan's grin thinned. This is crazy. It's adult, I said. Access is respect. Earn it. The cousin worked the key one more time, face reddening, then pulled it out like the lock had insulted him in public. Guess we can crash elsewhere, he muttered. Or you can sign, I said, and kept my voice where law lives, low and exact. Mom, please, Dana said. This looks bad. It looks clear. The locksmith handed me the small envelope with 2 labeled keys. You're set. Any issues, call the number. Squeezed, I thank you, I said. Ethan folded his arms. I'll remember this. So will the door, I said. He barked a laugh. You think paper and locks are going to make people behave? They're going to make people choose. He stepped closer. You love this. The power. I love peace, I said. Power is a tool. Peace is the point. The locksmith gave me a respectful nod and headed toward the van. The screen door sighed shut behind him. The chimes settled, one soft tick against the wood. The cousin hovered by the office door like he might try again with some new trick. I turned the knob with my new key, opened the door half an inch and closed it. The latch kissed home with a quiet that felt like a held line. Illegal, Ethan repeated as if saying it made it so. Legal, I said, and noticed. He glanced down the hall toward the dining room where the agreement stack still waited, pen on top like a little blue dare. You're not going to get signatures by threatening people. Threatening. I'm defining. I lifted my notebook, flipped to legal, and underlined a single line. Deadline, 6 p.m. Dana watched my pen move. This isn't going to make them nicer. Ernest, I said. That's Nicer's older sister. Turbulence Danzen dangled his failed key like a fish. So, where do we sleep? Where you were invited, I said, or you leave. Ethan's jaw flexed. We'll see, he said, which is what men say when they want to keep tomorrow hostage. 6 o'clock, I said. We'll see then. He turned away, then turned back, unable to let the moment go. You know the neighborhood thinks you're overreacting. They'll think what the chimes think, I said, as a small gust rattled them once more and then let them rest. Boundary makes music. Theft makes noise. He snorted. You always have a line. I have a line, I said. That's different. Voice floated from the living room. What's the Wi-Fi? Another. Did you find the good glasses? The house hummed. The new lock sat quiet, unbothered by need. Heart pulse prepared, beats polite, when the door is yours. I slipped the keys into my pocket, slid the receipt deeper into the notebook, and tapped the single word underlined there. Deadline. The page felt steady under my finger, as if paper could hold a minute until you got there. In the hall mirror, I looked like a woman who had measured her life and found it roughly even. 6, I said again, to no one and everyone. By late afternoon, the house had that held breath quiet that comes before a test. The porch notice flapped once. Inside the dining table was a small horizon. Packets fanned, the blue pen straight across the top. Ethan lounged in the doorway like a host between sets. You're not really going to make a show of this. It isn't a show, I said. It's a clock. Dana rubbed her palms together like she could warm the room into softness. Please don't do this in front of everyone. They arrived in front of everyone, I said. They can choose the same way. Tires whispered on gravel. Officer Ruiz stepped onto the porch, nodded at me, then at the notice. He didn't need to read it again. Afternoon, he said. Here is a witness. Cops on family? Ethan said brightly, angling it to the room. I'm not on anyone, Ruiz said. I mark the hour and keep the peace. I looked at the wall clock above the stove. The second hand lifted its face to the 12 like a swimmer sighting shore. People drifted closer without admitting they were doing it. Foreclosures, I said level. If you're staying, sign. If not, pack. Either choice is fine. Aunt somebody folded her arms. You'll charge your own blood? I'll charge for lodging, I said. Same as I'd pay if this weren't my house. You'll die alone, Ethan said, soft for the knife. I met his eyes. Signature or suitcase? Pick one. The clock chimed 6. Not loud, firm. Ruiz said that's time. Then the teen cousin with the failed key cleared his throat and slid forward. Where do I print my name? Here, I said, turning the top page and setting the pen in the margin. He wrote like a man signing for a package he didn't order. He passed the pen to a woman I barely knew who said, "It's cheaper than gas," and signed too. Another cousin looked at Ethan, got nothing back but a shrug, and started packing. Ethan laughed, but it sounded like a cough that lost its nerve. "You're really doing this?" "I'm not doing anything," I said. "They are." Inna's distressed. "Can we at least take this to the back room?" "It belongs here," I said, where it started. Ruiz watched the motion of bodies with professional boredom that somehow made everyone behave better. "If you're leaving, do it calmly," he said. "If you're signing, take a packet and return it here." Aunt somebody said, "You should be ashamed." "I am," I said, "that we had to get here." A relative shouldered past with a suitcase. Another slid a ring of keys across the table like tribute and took a packet instead. The blue pen moved, paused, moved again. The porch chimes pinged once when the door opened and shut. The house changed shape, quieter around the edges. Ethan planted his hands on the table and leaned over the stack. "Don't sign," he said to the room. "This is control. This is—" "Adults choosing," I said. "Let them." Only Seen in sunglasses stood very straight and said, "I'm not sleeping in a stranger's bed for free." She signed and set the pen down with dignity. I liked her instantly. Ethan tried a new tack. "We'll Venmo later." "Venmo is a promise," I said. "This is the payment." Dana's voice frayed. "Mom, please." "I said fair," I said. "This is fair on paper." The neighbor in the sun hat watched from the curb, not hiding it now. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She counted the way I was counting. The teen with the failed key handed me his packet signed and didn't meet my eyes. "We'll be out tomorrow," he muttered. "Tonight," I said, "if you didn't sign." He blinked. "We signed." "You did," I said. "Then you're staying. Treat it like you live here." Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. "You'll never live this down." "I'll live here," I said, "which is the point." The clock again, then at me. "Anything else you want me to witness?" "Just choices," I said. He nodded. "Then I'll do a loop and come back." He looked at Ethan. "Keep it civil." Ethan smiled thinly. "Always." Roofing stepped out. A suitcase zipper ripped open down the hall like a seam. A cabinet door shut softly, someone choosing not to slam. I gathered the first signed page, and only one, set it neatly on top of the stack, and slid the pen back to its line. I didn't look triumphant. I looked at the clock, which had already moved on. Heart pulse. A clock is kinder than a plea. Unbearable touched the table tent that read, "Print your name." "What happens if he doesn't sign?" "Pax," I said. "Tonight." Clang, hear her hand back like the paper was hot. "He won't." "Adam, that's a choice," I said. Kaepernick lifted his chin. "We're not going anywhere." "Then sign," I said, at the pen like it had insulted his lineage, then turned and walked away with the practiced swagger of a man who believes doors will open because he approaches them. The door didn't open for him. It opened for a cousin carrying a duffel. I placed the one signed agreement in a clean pile, set the rest squared up beside it. On top, an unsigned packet lay with a pen across it like a crossbar. The chime sounded once more, small and satisfied. Suitcases learned the shape of my doorway by nightfall. Zippers rasped, a duffel thudded. The porch notice fluttered and settled like it had made its point and was now resting. Disregard a cooler across the wood and left a pale skid. "We're going," he announced, as if departure were charity. "Thank you for the update," I said. Ethan stood at the bottom of the steps, hands in his pockets, giving directions like a foreman on a job site he didn't bid for. "Load the red one first," he called. "We're on a schedule." He glanced up at me. "Don't worry, we won't take your precious towels." "You already did," I said. He grinned at the neighbor in the sun hat, who had stationed herself at the curb with a patient dog and the kind of face you wear when you've decided to remember. "We tried to help her settle in," he told the air, "but she wants rules. Everywhere, like living in a classroom." "Classrooms have doors," I said. "People knock." Dana hovered on the step with a tote bag, eyes damp. Please don't make this worse. They're leaving. They're choosing, I said. And somebody hustled past me with my flower pot under one arm like a trophy. The clay tapped the rail and tipped. Soil burped onto the porch plank. Watch I said too late. Oh, she said, not bending. My bad. I raised the pot, brushed soil back into the crater with my fingers, and said nothing. Silence costs. I paid in dirt on my palms and the small ache of doing it myself. A smaller cousin peered into the living room. Where's the master again? Out, I said. He looked at Ethan for confirmation. Ethan looked at Dana. Dana looked at me. You can take the couch, she told the kid softly. Just for tonight. No, I said. Mom, tonight is the same as the contract, I said. If you didn't sign, you don't stay. Ethan laughed, a sound shaped for the neighbor's ears. She's evicting her own family. Correction, I said. I'm asking uninvited guests to leave. He widened his eyes at the neighbor, palms up, performing innocence. You see what I deal with? Her leash. I see a sign, she said mildly, chin toward the porch post, and a lot of luggage. I backed down the steps with a box of my pantry items he'd accidentally packed. I met his eyes. He set it down and mumbled. Oops. Thank you, I said, and took it back inside. I added pantry, returned in the notebook, then put the pen down. No new records tonight. The hour had done its work. I wanted quiet more than I wanted correctness. My phone buzzed on the buffet. Invoice due, 48 hours. I let it sit. The house read the message for me. Ethan followed me into the entry and dropped his voice. You know how this looks. Accurate, I said. Baseball. Invoked. Adult. Lean closer. You think this is over because you made people sign paper? I think we're done pretending, I said. And I think you owe me money. We'll Venmo later. Later isn't payment. He rolled his eyes and turned. Dan, car's running. Dana stood beside the buffet, fingers on a cream envelope. My name on the front in her quick, familiar hand. She set it gently on the wood like she was lowering a baby into a crib. What's that? I asked. Nothing, she said too fast. A note? I didn't know how to say it. Say it, I said. She shook her head, looked toward the door where Ethan's silhouette waited in the porch light. Not now. You're going with him, I said. I have to, she whispered. She stopped, swallowed. He needs me. You have a key, I said, peacefully. Not to the master, she said, and tried to smile like she could turn that into a joke. Keys follow respect, I said. You know that. She pressed her lips together. Please don't make me choose. A Ferdine, I said. You can choose again tomorrow. Ted even in the doorway, impatience tucked behind charm. We good? Dana nodded at him without looking away from me. Text me, she said, please. I will, I said, and meant it. Drive safely. She reached like she might hug. Then the tote bag slipped and she didn't. She went down the steps and into the wash of headlights. Ethan draped an arm over her shoulders, claimed her in the way men do when they think claim is love. The car door shut, too loud for a street this small. The neighbor waited until the engine turned over. Mrs. Hale? Yes? You did the right thing, she said. Just don't forget to sleep. Oh, I said. Thank you. She tugged the leash. Night, her duffel. Another suitcase. A cooler. Thunk. The porch rail took a hip check and complained. A cousin cursed the steps. Someone left an empty cup in my azalea. The last load finally cleared the doorway. Ethan stood in the threshold a beat longer, eyes hot, smile mild. You won't live this down. I'll live here, I said. He gave me an almost bow he thought was clever and stepped backward into the night. The porch chimes shivered once and then rested. His taillights cut across my wall like a flare and were gone. The quiet that followed was not emptiness. It was invoice-shaped, and I could afford it. I righted the flower pot properly and swept the dirt into my palm. My phone buzzed again when I set the broom back. Invoice due 48 hours, as if the house wanted it repeated. I tapped the screen off and set it face down beside the stack of unsigned packets. The envelope with Dana's handwriting waited where she'd left it. A small white question that could live one more hour. I lifted my hand to open it, then lowered it. Not tonight. Tonight, I cleaned. Nence is expensive. I'm buying it back. He broomed by the door, the porch light hummed. The fridge answered. I rinsed soil from my fingers and wiped the sink dry as if the house had asked to be tucked in. On the buffet, the envelope sat like a held breath. On my lock screen, the reminder glowed in a small, insistent line. The envelope sat where she left it. My lock screen said, invoice due 48 time. Proximity's envelope waited where she left it. My name slanted like she'd written while walking. I washed last night's soil from my fingers, dried them, and brought the envelope up to eye level so it was the only thing I could see. I slid a butter knife under the flap. No ceremony, just clean. Mom, please don't send anything. We will circle back. Ethan is under stress, and this weekend got away from us. Please don't make it ugly with money. I'll talk to him. Love you, D. Blinked at it twice, except the second time I didn't read the word please. I folded the page back into the envelope, then took it to the sink, struck a match and touched the corner. The flame took calmly, like it was doing me a favor. Goodbye, Donna, I said, to the paper, not the girl. The crackle was soft, ash loosened like gray lace and lifted. On the porch, the chime ticked once. The faucet hissed a second and died. I let the burned edge drop into the basin and ran water. The ash made a tiny starburst and vanished. My phone buzzed. Send it. Gianna, don't send it. Chira, just wait a few days. Airbus. I typed. Adults owe. Pay or don't, but own it. I watched the dots pulse, stop, pulse again. Accountability isn't cruelty, I said into the empty kitchen. It's a receipt. The dots vanished. Set the phone on the buffet beside the notebook and spread the receipts I'd corralled. Short montage, 3 breaths long, a photo of the hall gouge, a close shot of the bathroom towels. The faucet part in its crinkly bag, 2 pantry items replaced. No codes, just pictures beside their names. A list that looked like the bones of a story. I totaled once. I totaled again. I set T to steep, another quiet countdown under the big one, and opened my browser to book a notary slot. 3 clicks, a morning appointment held. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't even write the time in the notebook. I kept it in my head like a note you hum while you work. Defiance. The phone vibrated. Nea, don't do the deed thing. Me, it's not punishment, it's boundary. Dana, not now. Me, now is when paperwork matters. Knee, typing bubble appeared again. 3 dots, busy as a hummingbird, then disappeared. I stepped to the slider and cracked it for air. The house breathed with me. On the counter, the invoices stacked in my outbox, neat and unapologetic. Submerged again when the breeze shifted, and I imagined each note as a line on a ledger. Present, audible, unafraid to be counted. Abolish phone buzzed once more. Dana, can I call later? Me, yes. Navig screened flat on the buffet and read the header one last time. Payment due, 48 hours. The letters looked kind because they were fair. Paper remembers what people forget, I said, not to convince myself, but to remind myself why I became a teacher in the first place. The kettle's little timer sang. I pulled the bag, pressed it once to the side, and carried the mug to the porch. The burned letter's ash had left no mark. That felt like a kind of mercy. Art pulse. I won't beg, I'll bill. Foreground, sipped and listened to my house be as quiet as it wanted. On the table inside, the invoice line held steady at the top of the screen. On my phone, a gray oval appeared, the start of Dana's next message. It pulsed, it paused. It vanished. Sunday bells carried over the ridge like someone turning a wheel in the sky. The chimes on my porch tried to answer and couldn't. Church brass swallowed their small voice whole. I pressed the crease of my skirt flat and told myself to listen more than speak. They taught me patience. Today, I needed witnesses. Ethan was sunshine at the sanctuary doors, handshakes ready. Marjorie's settling in great, he told anyone with ears. We were up there to help, you know how moms are, everything by the book. Laughter, a few sympathetic winces aimed my way, like I'd oversalted a casserole. Pastor Rowland greeted him first, palms warm, eyes kind. Good to see family in town, he said, then turned to me. How's the cottage, Mrs. Hale? Standing, I said. A woman from the choir leaned in close as we took our pew. We all need to be flexible, she whispered. Summer's for togetherness. Summer's for respect, I said, and she blinked like I'd swapped hymns on her. During announcements, Ethan slid an envelope into the plate with a flourish I could see from 3 pews back. He didn't look at me. He looked at the room. The plate moved on, heavier and lighter by turns. After the benediction, the parking lot turned to pleasant rumor. She posted rules, someone said. He's doing his best, said another. I let the murmurs wash, then asked Pastor if he could stop by for 5 minutes. Just to witness, I said. He nodded, if it keeps peace. Main air felt cleaner than church air. The notice still fluttered. Private property, agreement required. Compliance deadline, 6 p.m. today. Yesterday's truth, today's reminder. The chimes ticked once, as if inventorying the breeze. Ethan arrived with Dana and the smile he keeps for stages. The neighbor in the sun hat paused at the curb, leash slack. Pastor, Ethan began, palms open. Mom's got herself wound a little tight. We were helping her move in. She made it formal. Adults like formal, I said. It keeps us from guessing. Pastor Rowland's eyes went from Ethan to me. What do you need me to hear? That the terms are fair, I said. Some signed, some didn't. For those who didn't, an invoice went out. They can pay it or explain why they won't, like adults. Ethan. Dana slipped her hand through Ethan's elbow. Please don't do this here, I said, and we can discuss casseroles. Ethan gave a gentle, brave chuckle. Pastor, she's charging family for beds. I'm charging people who stayed without asking, I said. He spread his hands, appeal wide. We came to help. Help returns the pantry it emptied, I said. Help knocks. Pastor looked tired in the way men of God look tired when grown children ask them to explain kindergarten. Son, he said, she's asking for accountability. That's not a sin. Allergies Gine worked at its edges. This is petty. Disillusion fits in a pocket, I said. This was my whole house. Balloons was almost a plea. Mom, people will talk. They already are, I said. They can keep talking while he signs. Ethan glanced at the table inside where the packets lay, blue pen across the top like a horizon, not doing performative paperwork. Then you can pay the invoice, I said. Today or tomorrow? He shook his head, regretful for show. We'll Venmo later. Later is not payment. Mom, Dana said, a warning and a wish. I took one packet off the stack and held it so only its header showed. If it's righteous, I said, it's signs. For a beat, no one moved. The neighbor's dog snuffled my azalea. Somewhere a screen door clapped. Ethan looked at the pastor, then at the paper, then at his empty hands. He didn't reach. Clang. That's a refusal, I said evenly. Not refusal, he said quickly. Just, this isn't how family works. Pastor's jaw set a fraction. What would make it family is honoring the house. Ethan laughed short. You taking her side now? I'm taking the side of peace, Pastor said, and peace keeps receipts. Dana's eyes shone. Please, can we not make a scene on the porch? Slaughtered. This is the door they came through, I said. This is where it gets answered. Dana's chin. I'm not signing anything. Take the church bell across the ridge began the 12:05 like a man counting reasons. My porch chime finally managed a single bright tick between tolls. Hard pulse. They taught me patience. Today I needed witnesses. Or nodded once, decision settling on his face like shade on a hot step. Mrs. Hale, he said, you've been clear. Ethan, I heard you decline. Ethan shifted, smile not quite elastic enough to bounce. We'll work it out. You can, Pastor said. With a pen. He gave me a look that felt like a hand on a shoulder, then stepped down to the walk. The neighbor followed with her eyes, the dog's leash lazy as a ribbon. The phone screen dimmed, then brightened again, the banner still there. Inspection rescheduled, day 8, 2 p.m. Pastor glanced from the glow to Ethan's unoccupied fingers and said nothing. I heard it before I saw it, my own voice, thinner and younger on a dozen phones. Maybe I'll host a big party once I move in. Laughter rippled down the lane like wind in tin. Ethan stood on the sidewalk with a ring of neighbors and two of his cousins, phone held at chest height. Context, he said, grinning. She joked about parties all spring. Now she's charging kids for beds. A few people chuckled. One made a face like pity in church. I stepped onto the porch. That clip is months old. It's your words, Mom, he said, loud enough to reach porches. Jokes aren't consent, I said. Policy is. Dana slipped between us, palms up. Please don't do this online, she whispered. Take the post down. We can talk. Then settle it like adults, I said. Sign or pay. A neighbor whose name I didn't know tilted her phone to show another. She said, party, the woman murmured. Being right is quiet. Being loud is cheap, I said. Nobody wrote that down. Discontent turned the screen toward the small crowd again, letting the laugh line play. We'll Venmo later, he added, the phrase that thinks it's a balm. Taj is not payment, I said. Payment for what? He said, cheerful as caffeine. Family time? Our lawyer friend says you can't charge family. Your friend's wrong, I said. Adults pay for lodging. Adults fix what they break. Dana tugged his sleeve. Please, don't make it worse. He smiled over her head at the neighbors. She's spiraling. Truth can wait. Lies need a crowd, I said. Flush the Chimes tried to answer the laughter and failed, swallowed by the clip's tinny cheer. A teen on a bike yelled, "Party!" and shot past like a headline. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I half hoped for Ruiz. Instead, Pastor Roland, let's cool off today. I can't mediate a street debate. Me understood. Thank you for witnessing yesterday. No dots came back. After the way, the neighbor in the sended not to see watched with her jaw set. Her dog lay down, bored of our human tricks. Mom, Dana said, voice trembling, please delete the invoice. I'll talk to him. Reocracy, Lydia said. They're housekeeping. Dana sat beside him, fingers white around her phone. Please don't humiliate us, she whispered toward me. If it was harmless, I said, sign it. Ethan exhaled like a saint with patience. My lawyer friend says you can't charge family. Ruiz cleared his throat. I won't comment on family, but I can confirm two things. First, I was present on the porch, twice. The owner posted conditions and a deadline. I witnessed clear communication. Second, the rekeyed locks restrict private rooms only. No one was barred from leaving, no eviction. Leah nodded. Thank you, officer. Perfected his hands. Yesterday I observed a refusal on the porch. She asked him to sign. He declined. Foreclosure smiled without showing teeth. I said we'd Venmo later. Lydia said, or a payment. He spread his hands like a host. She joked about parties, the neighbors heard her. Consent isn't a joke, I said. It's a line you sign. He looked at me, practiced warmth dying around the edges. You love rules. I love peace, I said. Rules are the price of it. Lydia flipped a page. Our bylaws allow posted terms on private property. Quiet hours apply. The question is remedy. Sign and stay within terms, or settle the invoice and go. She turned to me. Do you have a single signed example to show the board the form used? In the center of the table, lodging agreement, header clear, signature line visible, signed earlier by a cousin who could do math. I didn't fan the rest. I didn't show totals. I let the paper occupy its square of truth. Ethan laughed once. Props, evidence, Lydia said. Dana leaned forward, voice small. Can we not do this performatively? Charm isn't currency here, I said. Ruiz folded his arms, not unkind. Deadlines aren't insults, they're clocks. The wall clock ticked. The room listened. Gently, a gavel in miniature. Good. Let's keep the noise down in the community moving forward. Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped, paper rustled. A faint draft in the hallway nudged a decorative chime by the door, and it gave one small bright tick, sound bending around a signed line. I gathered my copy of the form, slid it into the notebook, and closed the cover. My phone gave a quiet ping in my purse. Tomorrow morning's reminder to file what needed filing. I didn't take it out. I didn't need the screen. The clock above the door still read near 5:32. Time doesn't gloat. It records. The pen lay across his signature, ink drying in the open air, eld like toner and citrus cleaner. A simple wall clock above the intake desk read just past 9:02 a.m. The notary checked my ID, read the addendum once, then again, and slid the stamp to the edge like a small square certainty. Safeguard to your property packet and trust file, she said. I said, occupancy and inheritance contingent on respect and written consent. Clear. She nodded, set the pages square, and pressed. The stamp landed with a soft, practical thunk. Somewhere in the lobby, a decorative chime answered itself with one polite tick. Anything else today? She asked. Peace, I said, and a receipt. She smiled without prying. Congratulations on your boundaries. Outside, Officer Ruiz stood at the curb with his hands in his pockets, taking up as little space as a witness can. Ethan and Dana waited by their car. A paper bag sat on the hood, towels folded, the cabinet opener, 2 pantry items, a truant coaster, and the spare of an old key that now opened nothing. Ethan held out an envelope. The first payment, he said, no grin. We'll finish the rest per the agreement. Ruiz, catching my eyes, and then the envelope, like a tennis judge who only calls lines. Handoff witnessed. I took the envelope and didn't look inside.